Hi, it's me, Dora V here, and today I'm going to tell you a story. The concept of this is actually based on Reddit's Am I the A-hole? And the stories there, like, I think some of them are real, some of them are not. But I would say that the ones that are not, like, it's obviously to get on places like Percolady, Lately, whatever. But it's also based on true possibility and true fact, and that is something that they do admit, that even if the story is maybe fake, it's possible that some people may be going through something similar, or it could be happening to them. So that's why those stories exist. And because the thing about creative writing exercises is that they don't just come out of nowhere. The story I'm about to tell you is like one of the fake ones, but it is based on true fact and true possibility or probability. And if this has happened to any of you, or if you're going through it now, then I can only tell you that I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for you, and go get a hug or something. So, anyway, this particular story, I'm going to pretend like it's real. So, anyway, this particular story happened like September 2005 around a fantasy convention known as Dragon Con. It's a convention I personally have never been to and probably won't ever, I don't know. But anyway, the OP, I'll say OP, in quote, original poster, is named TrishaTabi, who was 21 at this time, and she lived with 4 other people, and the group is known as the Geek House. And they're still around to this day, by the way, just for the record. But she lived with 4 other people, and she has an older brother named Sal, who was 25 at the time. At this point, like Tabi, she was 21, he's 25, and he's getting married to a woman named Sela, who was 23. And so there's Sal and Sela, basically, like both are guilty of years of harassing others, jerking people around, emotionally abusing, and basically ruining TrishaTabi and other targets for years. But I will only be focusing on this particular incident. Now, TrishaTabi was considered a primary target of her brother, but it's debatable. Some say that she was not, others say that she was. She was, however, one of the primary observers of all that was going on. But in this case, it's about her. So just in case you didn't know that. So anyway, she was sent an invitation to go to her brother's wedding. By all accounts, she didn't want to go, but feared that saying no would cause problems with him and other relatives, so she, quote-unquote, agrees, but has no intention of going, especially since the wedding day was the same as Saturday at Dragon Con. And the story takes place in North Carolina. They live around Charlotte, and so it's about 4 hours from Charlotte to Atlanta. In TrishaTabi's case, it wouldn't have taken much longer, as she lived outside of Charlotte. I'm not entirely sure where, though, but she did. And she does write about all this on social media, but it's a little more private than what she posts later. Like, someone asks her what the problem with her brother is, and she basically said, put it this way, if I had my way, both him and his future wife would disappear from my life permanently. He's had a problem with me since I was in my teens, and at this point I'm pretty certain that he hates me because I'm a geek who loves anime and manga. Which of course is a stupid reason to hate anyone. It's also not true. To put it really simply, he hated her because she wouldn't submit to his tyranny. That's the thing, like she was never willing to do anything he had said or what he had wanted. Again, to put it basically. And so because of that, he hated her for that reason. And that was... yeah, he hated her for that reason, and that people like her are usually pretty non-compliant anyway, unless they really adore you. They have a great deal of respect for you. She had neither for Sal, and has this just in the end outright hated him. But at this point, like, she was still mostly ambivalent and wanted, quote unquote, the good brother back, but was increasingly certain that such a brother died years ago. That's pretty long. Like, that's another story. The replies generally just feel sorry for you, especially since a compromise of some sort would not have worked. Because to put it simply, like with someone like Sal, like there's really no way you can compromise, and it's widely agreed that he most likely didn't want her going at all. But she didn't want to go to the wedding at all. So like I said, a compromise would not have worked. So anyway, a couple weeks before the wedding, TrishaTabi gets an uninvite in both email and in paper form. That's what she says. So she's uninvited. Sounds great, right? But we'll see about that. She's very happy with this and is far more public in her social media post. At this point, like, social media, I don't think it would have been Facebook, because Facebook is, I don't think it was all that prominent at the time. I mean, I don't know. I'm honestly not certain. But I think it was like MySpace was the big thing at the time, a live journal, and that's something like that. But she is a lot more, she's more public with this, and I'm almost positive it was live journal, because she has pictures of it with two of her roommates named Dabo and Lula, and they're celebrating online, like, yeah, you know, free from this stupid wedding, and they were clearly very happy, and so, and people are generally happy, like, oh, great, you don't have to go, like, you can go to Dragon Con, sounds cool, huh? Yeah, sure. But one guy, he's a friend, an online friend to this day. He's from Vancouver. But anyway, he asks her, like, why does she insist on airing out her dirty diapers? Which is another way of saying dirty laundry. And she says, I need to show as much proof as possible, so this has to be public. And so she does that a lot. Like, it's basically done as proof in case someone in the family maybe had questions. But I did understand that myself. Like, I understood it. But it did leave a bad taste in my mouth, as it came across as bragging. Also, if you're dealing with someone like Sal, who is definitely a quote-unquote family destroyer type, I guess, or abusive, it's you probably shouldn't be doing that, because if they read it, like, they're not exactly going to shrug it off. It's nice to think that they would, but they would not, especially if narcissism is involved. To them, it's like a capote. But they also had a tendency of bragging, like how blessed they are, how great their lives are, and that's kind of a low-class thing to do, to be honest. I mean, I certainly think it is. So anyway, they go to Dragon Con and think that everything is fine, and the way conventions work is that ordinarily it's a Friday to Sunday, and they have these different events at different times, and guests and panels, and they think everything's fine. Like, nothing happens on Friday, and Saturday, like, Saturday is kind of the big day, at least in my experience, because that's when most things do happen on Saturday, like, especially like in the morning and afternoon. But on Saturday afternoon, she gets a call from Sal, who is furious that she didn't go to the wedding. Her response was, I was uninvited. And she has this, like, publicly, like, it's her public live journal on MySpace. So someone in the family had to have seen it. But both Sal and Scylla swore up and down that they didn't. And this caused a lot of confusion. And it's Saturday. That's the day of the wedding. So that would mean that they went through this wedding, have the reception. Let me see. A Saturday wedding would most likely be in the morning. So the reception would be in the afternoon. At least that's what I think, at least. So that would mean that they must have went to their wedding, waited until the reception, and then decided to call then. But they swore up and down that they didn't send any kind of uninvite, and it caused a lot of confusion. For the record, this particular family, like I said, they were Italian American. I'm not sure, like, if a family member doesn't show up at a wedding, at least from what I understood, it's going to raise eyebrows, especially, like, in, like, I guess a family-oriented culture or something, but aren't most cultures like that? But all I know for sure is that in this particular family, it definitely would have raised eyebrows at the very least. In other cases, it's considered an insult. And that's given how Sal was, it's most likely how he took it, like as an insult. But she claims that she was uninvited. Sal and Sela claimed that she was not, and that she actually was invited, as she is his sister. But some kind of joke that, well, lucky you weren't a bridesmaid, ha ha ha, but no, that's not exactly the point. So anyway, he tells her, maybe I'll pay you a visit, which to TrishaTabi is considered scary because she knows that he'd ruin it if he did show up, that's gonna be a problem. He didn't show up, but the rest of convention is ruined with that Paul. It was kind of ruined. Yeah, it was kind of, because now, like, she'd be spending the rest of the convention wondering if he's going to show and what he's going to do. But if he did show up, that would be insane. I mean, he had a lot of money. He could easily have gone to Charlotte in less than an hour because he was wealthy enough to get, like, private jets. And again, that's another story. But he could easily have shown up very fast, very quickly. Like, if he's not a very fast driver, which he was, he could easily get there by plane. I think it's maybe 30 minutes, but that's not the point. It's that the threat was made, or like the warning or whatever it was, and it did legitimately scare Tabi, and she's someone who doesn't scare easily. So it was ruined with that Paul. Other people didn't get it. They were angry at her. So they were like, well, why didn't you go to the wedding? Like, a wedding is only a few times in a lifetime, whereas a convention's once a year. The only thing about the conventions is that even if they go next year, it's not the same. So every convention is different. So for some people, they were definitely offended for Sal, of all people, because he's family and you chose a convention over a wedding. I guess they weren't happy with that, but it's also like not really their business or their decision. But a lot of people apparently were angrier than she thought they would be and definitely considered it odd. But Tabi also knew that when she gets home, that's not going to be fun either. Like, definitely not. Yeah, considering how vindictive her brother was reputed to be. So there was definitely, yikes. So it was considered a big deal because, like I said, in Sal's family, not showing up to a wedding after being invited is considered an insult unless you make it clear that you can't go. Could she have RSVP'd? Again, she felt like it wouldn't have worked because they would try to find ways around that and try to talk their way around that. And so that probably wouldn't have worked. But anyway, as stated already, she was afraid to say no, and that could be considered her fault. But a lot of people had no idea what Sal and Sela were actually like to her, and other people who were targeted people, and there were quite a few of them in the family. And that's a whole nother thing. So, but a lot of people believed Sal and Sela over her, which means people believe that TrishaTabi made up the invite. It's like, wow, and to Tabi, like, that was absolutely gobsmacking that even people who were considered at least acquaintances and friends, other family members, like, they honestly believed that she made it up, that she's just saying she was uninvited so she didn't have to go. So in the minds of a lot of people, she made it up and just didn't want to go to the wedding, which is, again, considered a bad thing. Yeah. Yeah, so some people were sympathetic to TrishaTabi, including the patriarch of the family. It's like probably one of the very few family members she was close to. But he believed that she was set up and was damned no matter what she did. If she showed up, she at best would be ignored, at worst to be treated poorly, which is why some people consider her lucky that she wasn't made a bridesmaid. But they did have that, but Sal and Scylla did have that attitude of, well, she shouldn't do this, she shouldn't do that. Like, we could have been worse. Like, she could, like, again, the bridesmaid thing. But again, she was just damned no matter what she did. She so shows up, she would not have been treated well. She probably would have been told, well, we didn't invite you. You were uninvited. Why are you here? You know, it just would have been a hot mess regardless. If she doesn't show up, it's a hot mess anyway. So a lot of people contend that she probably figured that she's going to be punished anyway, so might as well just go ahead and go to the convention. Well, if that works for you, great. But as you can see, like, it didn't, because she was just in that double bind. And like I said, she would have been in trouble anyway, and that she would not have been happy at the wedding, I hope. And she tried to have fun at the convention. She certainly did on Friday, but on Saturday, the morning was fine, but it was a bit ruined. And the consequences of all of this is that she lost friends, both online and offline, which to me was just like, okay, you lost friends over something that was not... It's like you were willing to ghost somebody who is not in your family. You don't get to make that decision. It's none of your business anyway. But I guess because Sal was like this wealthy multimillionaire, they believe him over her. So she's lost friends over that. It caused even more tension in the family. And basically, like, a lot of people considered it wrong to reject a sibling's wedding over a convention that is once a year. And yes, they are fairly common in the US where weddings are not. So... But I think this was a setup. The patriarch believed that. The matriarch, on the other hand, believed that it was some kind of misunderstanding. But me, like, I think it was a setup. A lot of people do. And if this was posted at or the A-hole or whatever it's supposed to be, am I the a-hole? The vast majority would have said no, or ESH, like everyone sucks here. Like, am I the a-hole? It's like, me, she definitely isn't. She didn't want to go anyway. She made it pretty clear on a public forum that she was uninvited. So, like, I definitely don't think she did anything wrong. And I feel like a lot of Reddit would agree that she didn't do anything wrong. But there were a lot of people who disagreed. And Sal, because, again, the setup here, she was set up, make her out to be as terrible as possible, just an excuse to treat her even worse, to do all these terrible things to her because she's a terrible person. And if they can convince others that she's a terrible person, like, no one would really stand up for her. That is kind of how abusers work. So here's what they ended up doing. They tried to get her fired from her job. They've never been successful here. So for all his money and power, thankfully, like, they've never been able to get her fired from her job. So that's the one good thing. Like, they've tried to have her charged with welfare fraud, also unsuccessful. Like, yeah, so much for the money and power, I guess. But in the area she lived in, they didn't have quite the same clout. At least certainly nowhere near enough in that particular area. But they were not successful there. Tax evasion, which also, because the IRS just doesn't really care unless you're making a lot of money or you have information. But that's my theory, at least. Like, they didn't do anything. Again, like, to get the IRS on your back, you have to make quite a bit, and they didn't. So There are a lot of nasty grams, like online and offline, like a lot of just nasty harassment, like turning some people against her, which was already done, like, and especially like family members who already had a problem with her, like now it's like even more of a problem. So, to the patriarch, the Geek House, and those who remain sympathetic, Sal and Sela were basically just looking for reasons to keep punishing her, which is pretty typical, again, of abusive people. They've done it before and kept doing it for years after the wedding. Like, so that just tells you how relentless these jerks were. So, again, if this was in Am I the A-hole, I guarantee you, like, it's a resounding no. Like, it's a no. It's a no from me, dog. And while some could argue everyone sucks here, I would say no, it's obvious who the a-holes were. And what makes this so distressing is that this is hardly the only, like, wedding drama that exists. Like, there's a lot more of it, and I actually do have a few more of such stories. There's a lot on Sal and Sela as well, like a lot of story time there, but it's very, like, hair-raising and unreal. But I can tell you that Sal and Sela have absolutely, like, ruined a lot of lives, and it was ongoing for years, like way too long. And so, but that's like a whole different set of stories. So, no, TrishaTabi is not the a-hole. She couldn't be if she tried. I'd certainly say no. And that'll do for this particular story. Hope you enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, and all that. See you later. Goodbye.